Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode. Today, we're going to be talking about some changes that I think we are all feeling, even if we are not talking about it quite yet. But a number of recent, news items, if you will, have just been catching my attention that things in medicine are changing, have been changing rather, and just aren't going back. So I've recently been in touch with a number of women physicians specifically who work for the organization that I was at for such a long time, and a large group of them who primarily were doing telehealth and inbox management have just been let go. It was a group of 40 people that are being removed from their positions and replaced, I believe, mostly by mid levels. And some of them have been there doing this for years. By nature of been on this team, these were experienced physicians and people with an excellent track record of providing excellent care. And many of them had been with the organization for a very long time. And they're let go. Their positions were made redundant, as is said sometimes, and they're just out the door. There were some other people who were primarily in primary care who had some FTE put aside in other parts of the organization, so in behavioral health, for example. And they were told that that FTE was just gone, and they were welcome to apply to increase their FTE in primary care. Twofold issues here. One, FTE going away, right? No, very little warning, I should say, but also the need to apply to maintain their FTE, even though, let's acknowledge, primary care is significantly under resourced and access is always an issue. But that was a really strange twist, quite frankly, to the story. But I was thinking about this and really just remembering some of my experiences of being made to feel like the work that I was doing was not important. It didn't matter. It didn't matter how long any of us had been there. It didn't matter the contributions we had made. What mattered was what they needed to do right now based on the budget. And quite frankly, some of this is business, right? There's economic factors at work here. But it just brought me back to remembering having this sense of very strong loyalty to the place that I had been working in. In fact, it was actually the hospital that I was born in and parents had worked in. I I had this strong sense of loyalty. I was working so hard for such a long time. And I remember some big blows. Now, this was a different time, and I was not fired, uh, or have the same experience that I just described. But it just took me back to this place of remembering the crush of feeling like you're being dismissed, like you as a person don't matter, and it doesn't matter what you've done, how many years you've been there, how much you've contributed. Blood, sweat, and tears, right, of the very real work that we do as physicians. Now, I also happened to catch Noah Wiley on the Colbert Show. Now, if you're old like me, you remember Noah Wiley from ER, which he mentioned the airing year of the show was 1993. I didn't watch it when it first came out because I was a little bit too young, but I do remember watching it during high school. And here he is back playing an ER physician and listening to Noah Wiley, the actor, talk about his experiences of observing and trying to really understand the dynamics of healthcare. And he was on the Colbert Show talking about his recent show called The Pit, which apparently is an excellent, amazing show. And I haven't seen it, and I don't think I'm going to watch it, just because I don't want to take myself into the trauma of things that I've experienced. Now, I know just a little bit of the things that have happened on the show. I know there is a physician who's struggling with drug abuse. There is some assault that happens, and it sounds like they are working in a very difficult ER setting, and noticing the change in dynamics of the interactions between healthcare teams and patients. I choose not to spend my free time doing that. But when I heard Noah Wiley, the actor, speaking about changes in healthcare and the importance of mental health for physicians, it just happened to coincide very nicely in my brain about these stories that I was hearing from friends and colleagues who were experiencing these current layoffs. Things are changing. Things have changed and they are changing, and we need to be prepared. When I went into medicine, I was very familiar with physicians who had been in their practices for a very long time. My own family physician growing up was there until and after I was a resident. I actually came and did sabbatical leave for him. Long standing primary care physicians in these settings, and many other specialties as well. People who had a long staying path in medicine, being in one place, providing care over this long continuity. That was what I entered medicine thinking was the normal path. But my friends, it hasn't been that way for quite some time now. And we are caught up in this place of whatever the next wave is. But I'll tell you, I don't think it's going very well. When I think back to what were conditions like that allowed these physicians to stay in place, now some of it is just they had a wife at home who was working and or not working rather, and raising children. And if you are listening to me and you are a woman, if you are even if you are a male physician, but more involved in the childcare, right? You don't have a stay-at-home partner, and this is your reality, or you don't have, even if you don't have children, but you don't have a stay-at-home spouse who's taking care of the other life responsibilities, there are factors here that are different from the generation that came before, or even generations two stages before us. As all of these things were swirling, I just can't help but notice that we need to continue to change and adapt. That's what I want to focus on for the rest of our time here today. How will we choose to be ready so that we have choice, agency, and a place at the table? So let's talk through what we need to do differently in order to not be at the victim of a system and not be at the victim of the whims of healthcare in general, right? Because it isn't just the systems that we work for, uh, the insurance companies, the patients and their expectations, right? There are a host of factors that are at play, making the practice of medicine quite challenging. It never was an easy path, but there are additional factors here that weren't present before. Couple that in with everything that's going on in the government, uncertainty. If you are employed in a government run organization right now, colleagues that we have at the VA, right, dealing with so much uncertainty, dealing with staff who have been sent letters that they should quit or they might be replaced or not replaced rather, but they may be let go, right, because the government is downsizing. There are so many things going on here. Vaccine arguments that we haven't seen before. that are being happen at the federal level of, well, maybe vaccines aren't so safe, right? There are important factors here that will make our work more challenging, and we need to be ready for it. So, first and foremost, we need to believe in the value of our expertise, our skills, and our experience. This is really critical for navigating this time, and not to say that we should be a-holes, right? I'm not talking about it from that perspective, but just to recognize that we are incredibly knowledgeable, curious, um, experienced people. And we need to really trust that our knowledge and expertise will continue to serve us well and that we use it for good. It's important to be grounded in this place because when you are let go from an organization after having worked there for 10, 20, 30 years, you can believe that you must have done something wrong in order for you to have been dismissed like that. And it's not true. It had nothing to do with people's skill levels or expertise. It had to do with the fact that somebody's decided that this department should no longer have physicians on it, that it should be staffed by mid-levels. Someone made that decision, and who knows how much they considered the expertise, skills, and experience of the team that they were letting go. I doubt they gave it a lot of thought because that seems so short-sighted, but here's the deal. In our healthcare systems, which are struggling with so much bureaucracy and administration burden, they're very quick to dismiss things that are expensive, and things that are expensive are us. But that doesn't mean that your experience, your expertise, your skills are not valuable. Them not valuing those things does not make them invaluable or not valuable. We need to hold on to this belief that who we are and the things that we are able to do are important. Because if we don't believe that that's true, then we will give in to defeat and we will believe the lie that we don't matter. Now, there's this very human element that comes into play here of us easily believing that me losing a job means that I, as a human being, is not valuable because we're so intermeshed with our identity as physicians. So there's that piece of it. But also, this decision had nothing to do with the expertise of the team and had everything to do with a desire to fix the budget. We need to see that, and we can still have our feelings, but it's a further call for us to separate this deep sense of loyalty we may feel to our organization and instead decide that no, I have a deep sense of loyalty to my skills, my expertise, not to say that I'm not always learning, growing, because I think that's an important element here as well. But if I believe that my skills and my expertise are not valuable, then whatever I choose to do next is going to be influenced by that, and that's going to lead to more suffering, right? If I feel like my skills and expertise are not worthwhile, I will not accept good offers. I will take whatever I can get. And we need to move out of that because we have been given a lot of bad deals as physicians. Look at the pay gaps that occur between male and female physicians, between specialties. Look at how primary care is paid so much less. And whether or not we base our value on that as well, and it's just not okay. So that's part one. Part two is that we need to be ready and willing to engage with technology and other things, including delegating, that will help us to be more effective. Now, I'm going to belabor the point here. Effective, not necessarily efficient. The goal is not to do lots of things faster. The goal is to be doing the right things, to be doing them well. And that's effective rather than efficient. But we are going to be seeing how AI comes into healthcare more and more. And we need to be able to understand the tools. We need to be able to use electronic medical records well. We need to be able to use any technology that is a tool to be used alongside our knowledge, skills, and expertise. These things do not replace us. Now, there's a desire for them to, right? There is a desire to think, oh, well, I don't need to go see a physician. I can simply, ask ChatGPT to fix my problems. And that'll work for a bit of time for some things, but we all know what gets missed. We all know that we cannot replace our clinical knowledge and expertise and intuition with a machine. And if you've played it all with an AI scribe or used AI in anywhere else, you know that it makes interesting mistakes, I would say. I use an AI scribe, and I'm going to share this story because I think it's kind of hilarious. But I have taught it how to display lab results that I want to display in a certain way so that I can document them. And I've taught it how to calculate a few things for me. And I went through and I dictated the results, and it created the document that I wanted. But I noticed that I had not given it an insulin number. There was no insulin blood test that I had collected, and it had put one in, and it had calculated the insulin blood sugar calculation. And there's a little line down on the bottom of this AI scribe tool, and I said, you made up that insulin number. Can you please remove that? And it said, no, I didn't. And I laughed and I said, check the transcript. And it went through and it sort of, printed the transcript right in front of my eyes. And then it said, you are correct. There was no mention of an insulin level. I will remove that. And I thought this was so funny because here I was having this, conversation with this AI tool and letting it know that I had made a mistake and falsified something, which it's programmed to do that to some extent, right? Just like humans don't like to miss things, these AI tools don't like to make mistakes. That's a whole different interesting ball of wax there. But here I was, able to see that it had made a mistake and it had sort of lied to me that it hadn't made a mistake. And when I asked it to check itself, it recognized, oh, you're right, I did make a mistake. And I was joking with my friends that the good news is that it didn't quit. It didn't tell me, well, I don't like this job anymore and walk out. It simply righted itself. And I don't know, it's just such an interesting dynamic here. But whether we use an AI scribe, whether we use an in-person scribe, which I would argue is a tool. Yes, there is a human being doing that job, right? But the fact of using a scribe to help you is the use of a tool. Using people's knowledge and expertise to help you out in whatever setting and however that looks is important. And we're going to need to offload tasks that don't require us in order to be effective in the ways that we need to be. Now, this is true whether you are an employed physician or you're starting your own practice or anything that you are doing. The more that we are able to leverage tools and delegate tasks, the better off we're going to be. But it does take a willingness to learn the tools. It does take a willingness to let other people try and fail and be ready to coach them through. These things are important. We don't talk about them very much. We think about our experience in the hierarchy of medicine where we've got our attendings, we've got our fellows, we've got our residents, we've got our students, we've got our pre-med students, right? We have this very clear hierarchy. And as we progress up the chain, we expect more and more and more and more of ourselves, because in order to be an attending, I'm going to need to know how to do all these things. But when we are trying to delegate tasks and use our teams effectively, we can't we can't bring that same energy. I see people doing that and thinking that people with far less training than ourselves should just know. They don't know. That's okay. We can coach, we can train, we can try and help understand. And yes, not all of those folks are going to be coachable or trainable, just the same way not everyone who gets into medical school ends up being a good physician, right? This is true. But just to say, we need to come in with a willingness and an understanding that we will need help, that we will need effective tools, that we will need effective support in order to do our work. Again, that looks different in all different settings. Every setting has different resources, but you will need to adjust yourself based on what resources that you have. And the more willing you are to help engage in optimizing those for yourself, the better off you're going to be. If you have your own micro practice, right, you need to have an electronic medical record that works for what you need it to do. And that may change over time. You may need to leverage AI tools to be able to create handouts and resources. And yeah, you're going to need to check them. You're going to need to check them for accuracy. If you have access to an AI scribe, you may not get to pick which one. I decided that I would like to choose my own AI scribe. I, as an independent contractor, have chosen to pay for it. But that meant that I got to play around with a bunch of different ones. And I didn't start using one until I found one that I liked, one that was working, one that I was able to trust, even though, as I shared, it makes mistakes and it still needs some watching because they always will. They will always need some watching. Number three of how we are going to need to take care of ourselves as we navigate change. We will need to be our own advocates and believe what the system says and does when it acts the way that it does. What do I mean by this? So we will need to be very clear on what's okay and what's not okay for us. Knowing that none of us expects to come to work and just have easy, breezy days. Sure, does that happen some of the time where things are very straightforward? Yeah, that might happen to us. But none of us went into this thinking that we were just going to have a simple, straightforward time all day, every day. We are thoughtful, curious, engaged people. We will need to stay that, and we will need to trust that we bring tremendous skills, sort of looping back to the first one, right? But also, we will need to disengage a little bit from the idea that if I serve this place excellently, I will be rewarded. We need to instead trust that we will make sure that we get our needs taken care of, that we will do it in a healthy way, that we will do it in a way that is filled with self-kindness, but that we will speak up. If you are working for a place that is not taking good care of you, that is toxic, that is belittling you or harassing you in some way, if they are constantly promising things to you and in the end they aren't delivering on any of it, we need to believe that. We need to believe in how they're showing up. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that every time something falls through, we need to leave. But when there is a pattern, of things being promised and then not arriving, when there are systems in place that are designed to help in some way. Late arrival policies, no-show policies, expectations around refill requests and form completion, right? When there are things in place that are designed to be clear expectations and they are not being followed, we need to believe that this place is not showing up the way that they say they are. We need to believe that. We need to see them for who they are. And we need to make a decision, all right? If I work at a place that has all these policies, but no one ever follows them, and I've asked for them to follow, I've, gone through and worked with a manager or some other person, and I get the, yeah, 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 we'll work, or no, we're not going to do that, or, well, if we do that, we'll alienate the staff and they'll leave. If that's the constant message, then they are telling you who they are, that they are people who do not stand by their word. Then it's up to you to decide, what do I do with that? How do I advocate for myself? Is this a place that I want to continue to be? Is there something that I need to do differently because this is who they are? We're probably not all going to leave situations like that, but we might show up differently and we may decide what boundaries need to be in place in order to continue to work in that setting. This is really important that we see things for how they are, that we, like I said, sort of disconnect from this blind loyalty of, well, I'm here and I have to work as hard as I can and always be improving because they're never satisfied. No, no. That's not to say that we can't correct our mistakes and get better and improve. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that you're constantly feeling like you're not making the mark, but they are constantly letting you down. This is a toxic situation because they are taking advantage of the fact that you feel you need to work harder in order to get them to keep up their end of the bargain. It's not working. It doesn't work. There's no incentive for them to make that work if the way the system currently operates, you continue to work harder and harder and harder, and it doesn't matter how you feel to them. That sounds a little cold-hearted, but this is the reality that we're in. That the people who are often making decisions about staffing, about clinical operations, they are often not in it doing the work alongside us. They don't understand those dynamics. They're often far removed, or maybe they do, a clinical day a month. And because they're a boss, a leader, they're treated differently by the staff. We've all seen this. It's time to believe people when they show up and show you who they are. Again, this is not something I've not talked about before, but I think we really, really need to embrace that, be able to speak up for ourselves, be able to make decisions about what we are going to do in response to failed promises and lack of support, and certainly if there are toxic bullying behaviors. Change is here. And I don't think that we are going to go back to this time where people stayed in one place for a very long time and that was the norm. Things have shifted. There are different expectations amongst clinical providers of different stripes. There are different expectations for patients. Our systems are working very differently and they're just much more open without even saying it, but much more clear on, well, we're sticking to the budget. You will need to decide who you are and what you stand for, how you will navigate these changes, and how you will choose to succeed despite some of these forces. So, just to recap, the things that I encourage you to really give some thought to. One, believing in your expertise, skills, and experience. Believing that, yes, you are an infallible human being, but you are also an excellent physician. You know when that's true. Number two, that you'll need to leverage technology and other tools and resources to help you, because your quote unquote inability to keep up with the system is not because you are broken. It is because the expectations are such, the resources are low. You will need to engage with tools and resources. Number three, be your own advocate and believe them when they show up this way. I'm going to leave us at that because I think this is one of the episodes that you'll want to come back to, and you're going to want to think about. You're going to want to think about, what does all of this mean for me? What do I want for my future? How do I want to take care of patients? What will I need to do in order to make that happen? Things are changing, but there's also more opportunities than ever to think creatively here. People start their own practices. People join small practices. People work part-time. People are really thinking outside the box. There are cash pay and insurance pay models. People are trying different things, and you have the opportunity to do the same, but you'll need to break away from this thought of, I should stay in one place for forever. I think those times are gone. So take that, plan to set aside some time and think about it. Think about what you will do, how you are going to change and adapt, what's important for yourself, because you matter. My friends, thank you for listening. Take care. Have a wonderful week. Until next time.